Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Sikaris. Hidden deep within the warp, this planet is the current home of the original Traitor Legion and its Primarch, the place where all Dark Apostles are buried when they die. Somewhere on this demon world, covered with cathedrals and monuments to the Dark Gods, are the 17th Legion Astartes. Once known as the Imperial Heralds, this zealous legion were the first to fall to the clutches of chaos. They were led by their Primarch, who orchestrated the ascension to demonhood of one of his brothers and led a brutal campaign to ensnare the largest legion of all. His name is Lorgar Aurelian, the Horizon, and his legion is the Wordbearers. Today, we'll be cataloguing the tale of the 17th Legion from its birth to the close of the Horus Heresy, whilst looking at a few notable persons. My name is Michael for Tactica Imperialis, and welcome to Legions, a 40k Stories mini-series. The Imperial Heralds were the 17th Legion Astartes, founded by the Emperor from the gene seed of their Primarch, Lorgar. However, the Chaos Gods intervened and swept the Primarchs away across the galaxy, and so the Legion was without its father early on. The name Imperial Heralds comes from the Legion's role early in the Crusade. When the Emperor wished to deliver an ultimatum, it was delivered by a lone member of the 17th, with black armour, a winged mace, and a skull helm. Sounds like a chaplain, but bear in mind that chaplains actually didn't officially exist in the Legion until Lorgar implemented the role much later. The Imperial Heralds were zealous even before finding their Primarch, implying that his gene seed was designed that way, and opening up an interesting nature v nurture debate for some other time. They were even nicknamed the Iconoclasts by the wider Imperium, such was their devotion to the Emperor. When they conquered a planet, any material or individuals deemed to be in opposition to the Imperial truth were destroyed. This was particularly true during the Unification Wars on Terra, which is when the nickname first appeared, and continued throughout the Great Crusade. Also worth noting is that the armour of the Imperial Heralds was very different to that the Wordbearers used in the Heresy and in the modern age, being a dark metal colour as opposed to crimson and sporting a different insignia. Fun fact about the 17th, their initial recruits were the sons of those they conquered, at least those young enough to become Astartes, who were brought up fully aware of the sins of their parents who opposed the Emperor. It supposedly showed them how amazing the Emperor was for forgiving them, driving them to great deeds in his name. While the Imperial Heralds were the most zealous legion, they did not worship the Emperor as a god, for the Lord of Mankind had forbidden such practices in the new secular Imperium. All that changed with the discovery of Lorgar. Lorgar was the 14th Primarch to be discovered during the Great Crusade. After being spirited from Luna, where the Primarchs were born, he landed on the feudal world of Colchis, a once technological world in Segmentum Pacificus that had actually gone backwards to the technological equivalent of our medieval times. The infant Primarch was found by Cor Phaeron, who fostered and tutored him. Colchis was a religious world, with the main religion known as the Covenant, followed by Cor Phaeron and much of the populace. Lorgar's rise, as was typical for many Primarchs, was meteoric, and he soon became archpriest of the god sworn through his powerful charisma, much to the annoyance of his peers. Yet Lorgar's childhood was not an idyllic one, for his latent psychic power caused visions of a bronze-armoured warrior and a robed Cyclops, in fact the Emperor and Magnus the Red, not that Lorgar knew it. Eventually, these visions overpowered Lorgar, and he began to preach that Colchis' god was coming to them. Unsurprisingly, this was very divisive, and those who were envious of Lorgar saw this as the perfect chance to oust him, denouncing the Horizon as a heretic and creating a brutal civil war. Fought between loyalists of the Primarch, known as the Brotherhood of Lorgar, and followers of the Old Faith, remember that name. The Schism Wars engulfed the entire population over its 6-year length until Lorgar's forces stormed the temple he had trained at as a youth. Unfortunately, not everyone on Colchis, in fact roughly a third of them, agreed with the Primarch, and so the first of the events known as Great Purges took place to cement Lorgar's view as the dominant one. A year later, Lorgar was proven to be correct, as the Emperor and Magnus came to Colchis. Recognizing them from his visions, Lorgar knelt immediately before the Emperor and restructured the entire religion of Colchis to worship the Emperor in celebrations lasting several months. I have to wonder how the Emperor let this slide. It is said that it bothered him that Lorgar took so long over the whole affair, but no mention of the whole worship business. Lorgar was then given command of the Imperial Heralds, but immediately changed their name to the Word-Bearers. The newly renamed Word-Bearers were very different to the other legions in terms of methodology. Any world conquered by the 17th was fully converted to see the Emperor the same way the Legion did, as a god. Books, icons, and other ancient works were burned en masse, and any dissenters were put down, much like had taken place before the discovery of Lorgar, but now they were replaced with monuments and cathedrals dedicated to deifying the Emperor. Great works were written by the chaplains of the Legion, and at some time during the Crusade, Lorgar penned the Lectitio Divinitatus, which became the foundation for the imperial cult and the ecclesiarchy. Well done on that one, Imperium. There were two major events that I wish to talk about with regards to the Word-Bearers pre-heresy. The first is the First Battle for Davin, a joint compliance effort between the Word-Bearers and the Lunar Wolves. This was the first time the warrior lodges were shown to legions. The Davinites won the admiration of the Astartes with their tenacity, and both the Word-Bearers and the Lunar Wolves ended up adopting some of their customs, including their warrior lodges. Eventually, the lodges spread through most, if not all, other legions, with high-ranking members being part of the lodges, including some Primarchs. Of course, this was all done under wraps, very sneaky hush-hush, as the Emperor saw Astartes' secret societies as being a touch too close to the cult he had destroyed when founding the Imperial Truth. Oh look, he was right. And it's commonly accepted that the Word-Bearers were responsible for spreading the lodges to other legions, possibly through the chaplains, seeing as Lorgar recommended the idea to the other legions post-Nicaea. The second event is perhaps the most famous of all to involve the 17th, the humiliation at Monarchia, capital city of the planet Ker. The Emperor had grown tired of the Word-Bearers worshipping him as a god, which flew in the face of the Imperial Truth. He travelled with Malcador the Sigillite and the Ultramarines Legion to Monarchia, a city conquered by the Word-Bearers 60 years previously and known as the Perfect City. The Emperor bade Guilliman and the 13th Legion destroy Monarchia from orbit, reducing it to naught but ashes as a demonstration to Lorgar that his worship would not be tolerated. The entire Word-Bearers Legion was then gathered before the Lord of Mankind and forced to kneel before him, pledging themselves to the Crusade once more. Lorgar was humiliated following Monarchia, and retreated into solitude for an entire month, speaking to none save Corpheron and the first chaplain Erebus. Still believing that faith was central to humanity, Lorgar was slowly poisoned by the whispers of chaos through his lieutenants, and eventually returned to the fighting with a never-before-seen fervour, conquering more worlds than any other legion in the past 50 years. All this was a front, however, as Lorgar began a pilgrimage toward the Eye of Terror. During the pilgrimage, Lorgar began to research the various religions throughout human history and across the Imperium, and found that they shared common messages and ideas. This included the old faith he had destroyed on Colchis, which was where he began his research after attempting, and failing, to consult with Magnus on the issue. He then travelled to Cadia, which had only recently been conquered, and was greeted by a follower of the Chaos Gods known as Ingethel, who became Lorgar's guide through the Eye. Ingethel would go on to become a demon prince herself, and was part of Horus's court during the heresy. Ingethel revealed unto Lorgar and the Serrated Suns chapter the primordial truth, chaos itself, and following a ritual to ascend herself to demonhood involving the sacrifice of a custodes, she took them into the Eye. She showed the Word-Bearers the worlds in the Eldar Empire that had been swallowed up by the Eye, telling them that the Eldar's refusal to accept chaos and the god they created had been their undoing. In order for humanity to not go the same way, they had to accept the primordial truth and be enlightened by chaos. The Word-Bearers fell into the thrall of chaos roughly 40 years before the outbreak of the Horus Heresy. but Ingethel had more to show the horizon, taking him further into the eye. After besting both an avatar and a mighty bloodthirster, Lorgar was met by Kairos Fateweaver, the great oracle of Tzeentch, who told the Primarch that he would be faced with a momentous choice that could decide the war between Chaos and the Emperor. If he chose to, he could kill Rabuts Guilliman as vengeance for Monarchia, but if he did so, then Chaos would be defeated in the upcoming war. However, if he could live with the humiliation and work for the good of Chaos, victory could still come to pass. Fateweaver's heads both spoke the truth when talking to Lorgar, in what is the only recorded instance of them doing so. Usually one tells the truth, and the other tells an equally believable lie. With his pilgrimage complete, Lorgar and the Word-Bearers returned to real space and began trying to corrupt the other legions through the warrior lodges, whilst continuing to campaign at a ridiculous speed to mask their newfound treachery. Of course, the worlds they conquered post-pilgrimage were secretly set up to fall to Chaos when the time was right, and it is known that worlds previously conquered by the 17th fell too, such as Davin. Eventually, realizing that the subtle approach was no longer working, a more brazen tack was needed. Horus was corrupted via Erebus, and the entire Horus Heresy was engineered. Even after Horus openly declared his treachery, the Word-Bearers hid their betrayal for a little while longer. They were part of the fleet dispatched to Istvan V, and formed the second wave along with the Iron Warriors, Alpha Legion and Night Lords in the infamous Drop Site Massacre. Primarily fighting the retreating Raven Guard, the Word-Bearers inflicted heavy casualties on the 19th Legion, with Lorgar even facing Corvus Corax in single combat. He lost badly, and would have actually been killed were it not for the intervention of Conrad Kurz. Following Istvan, the Word-Bearers were sent to deal with and or tie up the Ultramarines. This was partially due to the idea of payback, but also because the Word-Bearers were the largest traitor legion, and actually the second largest legion of all, behind the Sons of Guilliman. Perhaps heeding the words of Fateweaver, or not, given the fact he went along with attacking Ultramar to begin with, Lorgar delegated Corphaeron to the main attack on Guilliman in the Battle of Calth, after some bravado and mockery because villain. Calth is described as a Pyrrhic, loyalist victory, for the Word-Bearers did ultimately fail to destroy Guilliman and his forces before being repulsed. However, over 100,000 Ultramarines died. Guilliman should have died, I'll explain why later, and the sun for the Viridian system was tainted, leaving Calth uninhabitable on the surface due to the toxic radiation the star now emitted. Erebus was also able to unleash the Ruin Storm, effectively cutting off the Loyalists from Terra as they could not use the warp. The Ruin Storm was strong, but in its post-Calth state it was not infallible, which is where Lorgar came into play. He teamed up with Angron and the World Eaters Legion, launching the Shadow Crusade into the heart of Ultramar. This was far more reckless and visceral than Calth, both because Lorgar needed to fully power the Ruin Storm, and, well, because Angron. Lorgar and Angron did not get on at first, and the Arising came to realise that the butcher's nails implanted in Angron were unable to deal with Primarch brains. In response to this, Lorgar took Angron back to New Saria, suggesting it may bring closure to the Red Angel, but also looking for the secrets of the nails. I will detail exactly what happened on New Saria when the Primarchs arrived another time, but Angron decided to purge the entire world because of what had transpired there. Guilliman and the Ultramarines arrived partway through, and the Lord of Ultramar duelled Lorgar to a standstill after they slipped through the traitor fleet. Unfortunately for Guilliman, Angron made his presence known during the duel and sufficiently battered Guilliman, who only escaped thanks to his son's timely aid. Angron's unadulterated rage was exactly what Lorgar needed, in fact, and he channeled Khorne's power using the infuriated Primarch as a conduit. Despite the World Eaters librarians attempting to halt the ritual, Lorgar overpowered them, transforming Angron into a demon prince of Khorne powerful enough to overcome the nails. The Ruin Storm was now fully charged, and so the World Eaters and Word Bearers withdrew from the fighting, slipping past the storm using tunnels known only to Lorgar in order to reach Terra. The Word Bearers were of course present on Terra, as Lorgar fought to overthrow the father he had once worshipped. There are no mentions of Lorgar fighting his brother Primarchs during the 55-day siege, nor of the Word-Bearers doing anything of particular note, but it is perhaps because of the Word-Bearers that the Horus Heresy ultimately failed. Because of the failure to kill Guilliman in the Battle of Calth, the Ultramarines were able to regroup and muster again, heading straight for Terra when the Ruin Storm faded. They never made it to Terra in time, but the knowledge that Guilliman was en route forced Horus's last gambit, lowering his shields, baiting the Emperor to face him, and ultimately dying. As a result, the heresy failed, and the Word-Bearers were forced to flee along with the other traitor legions into the Eye of Terror. The majority, led by Lorgar, settled right here on Sikaris. Well, I say here, I'm kind of as far away in orbit that we can see it without suddenly demons. The rest are in the Maelstrom, on the factory world of Galmec, but the Legion remains a unified force by the standards of the traitor legions. Lorgar, because he's boring, has been largely inactive since the heresy, but he was eventually ascended to demonhood due to, and I quote, the untold atrocities committed by the Word-Bearers. Feel like he might have cheated a bit, maybe? Whatever. He now meditates alone in the Templum Inficio, a temple stained with the blood of the 8 million slaves who built it, and were sacrificed at the end. In the absence of their Primarch, a group known as the Dark Council rules the Word-Bearers from Sikaris, made up of the 8 highest-ranking Dark Apostles in the Legion, including Erebus and Corphaeron. The former First Captain and First Chaplain are constantly engaged in schemes and power struggles, and Corphaeron has attempted on at least one occasion to eliminate Erebus, but failed. So that's the tale of the Word-Bearers, at least up until the aftermath of the Horus Heresy. But who were some of the key individuals within the fallen 17th Legion? Erebus, the very first to fall to chaos, probably, presumably following the first battle on Davin, but possibly forever, due to the old faith on Colchis revering the Chaos Gods in some way. Erebus was the first chaplain of the Word-Bearers, and was one of the individuals responsible for corrupting Lorgar following Monarchia. As I said before, only he and Corphaeron were even permitted to speak to the Primarch at that time. Erebus was also the one responsible for corrupting Horus. He worked his way into a position of respect and importance within the Lunar Wolves Legion, and stole an anathame blade from the Interrex, a human civilization in negotiations with Horus and co, until Erebus's action incited war between the two groups. Erebus then smuggled the anathame to the fallen planetary governor of Davin, Eugen Temba, before goading Horus to return to deal with Davin personally when it required bringing back to compliance. When Horus was wounded, Erebus then suggested to the Mornival that he be taken to the Serpent Lodge to be healed, at which point the first chaplain corrupted him through his dreams. Erebus remained with Horus during the very early parts of the heresy, though he was with the Word-Bearers in the Shadow Crusade in order to conjure the Ruin Storm and deal with Argel Tal. Again, we'll cover him in a bit. Despite his successes, including Istvan III as well as the events listed above, Erebus had one major failure in the heresy. Despite Lorgar's warnings, he engineered the Cygnus Prime incident with the Blood Angels, and then had the audacity to blame Horus for disrupting his plans. Mistake. Horus nearly flayed Erebus's tattooed face off his skull using his dagger. Erebus, of course, lives on as part of the Dark Council, but despite his great successes, the Chaos Gods have not seen fit to elevate him to demonhood. I assume it's so the power plays in the Dark Council don't get too skew with. The Chaos Gods probably like the madness. Erebus's chief rival on the Dark Council is the former first captain of the Word-Bearers, Corphaeron. Corphaeron found Lorgar and raised him, providing tutelage and spiritual aid throughout the Primarch's upbringing, and standing at the Horizon's side in the war against the Covenant and Old Faith. By the time the Emperor showed up and the Colchisians were integrated into the Legion, Corphaeron was too old to receive the gene therapy to allow him to become an Astartes, but he was elevated to an Astartes-like level through enhanced bionics and drugs. He remained close to Lorgar, being elevated to First Captain, but as the Word-Bearers campaigned, he began to realize that the faiths of the worlds they defeated had many similarities to his faith on Colchis. Wanting a backup in case their faith in the Emperor proved to be false, or perhaps just being a dirty heretic all along, he allowed remnants of these religions to survive, assumedly including the Serpent Lodge on Davin, without telling Lorgar, of course. Once he and Erebus had turned Lorgar, or at least set him on the road to corruption, it was Phaeron who suggested that the Primarch head for the Eye, which we covered earlier. Phaeron was in command of the Word-Bearers at Calth, and had the perfect opportunity to kill Reboot Guilliman when the 13th Primarch came to the command grid of Calth's defences. Paralysing Guilliman through warp shenanigans, Phaeron chose instead to try and corrupt him through his Athame, a shard of the Anathame stolen by Erebus, rather than simply kill Guilliman and possibly take the Ultramarines out of the heresy entirely. But whilst Guilliman was wounded, he resisted the dark magics within the Athame dagger and tore out Phaeron's primary heart in response, forcing the Word-Bearers to fall back. Phaeron then let his vendetta with the Ultramarines cloud his judgment again as his flagship retreated from Calth through the Maelstrom, pursued by Guilliman's flagship. He could have easily got away, but instead tried to destroy the Primarch's vessel. Guilliman wasn't even on board, he was just being petty, which cost him his own ship in the process. Phaeron only escaped by cutting a hole in reality using the Athame, aka by cheating. Not much more to say on Phaeron, as he's been on the Dark Council here on Sikaris ever since, assumedly trying to oust Erebus and kill Imperials, particularly the Ultramarines I would wager. Again, not got demonhood, but this time I think it's justified since he's stuffed up so many times. Fun fact, it is said that Lorgar orchestrated those who've travelled to Calth as those who were least likely to be of use to the Word-Bearers due to their judgment being clouded by their hatred of the Ultramarines. Says a lot about how highly he thought of Phaeron, eh? The Word-Bearers were the primary users of demons throughout the Horus Heresy, and they had a special affection for the Neverborn that meant Astartes were far more willing to give up to possession. The first possessed were the members of the Serrated Suns chapter who accompanied Lorgar into the Eye of Terror during the pilgrimage, known as the Gal Vorbak. The Gal Vorbak were also the first Word-Bearers to sport crimson armour as opposed to grey, and were led by their captain, Argel Tal. Originally recruited from Colchis to become a chaplain, Tal instead became the captain of the Serrated Suns' 7th Assault Company, and was unknowingly, at least at first, possessed by / bonded with a demon called Rorm during the pilgrimage. Ingathel told Lorgar that Argel Tal would become extremely powerful, taller than a Primarch, but also prophesied that he would die in the shadow of great wings, implying but not implicating Sanguinius of the Blood Angels. The Gal Vorbak were unleashed fully on Istvan V, dueling the custodians assigned to watch over the Word-Bearers. How they didn't spot the corruption is beyond me, but, plot. With some success. Sadly for Tal, he was the only Gal Vorbak to survive, losing his close friend Chaplain Zaphon, with an X, and the human confessor Cyrene Valantian, the sole survivor of the Monarchia bombardment who had been blinded during the Lancefire. Argel Tal then took up the weapons that killed them, a Guardian Spear and a Power Sword, in order to honour their memories. Following Istvan V, Argel Tal established the Vakrajal, his personal guard drawn from leaderless and splintered units from the Dropside Massacre, with a high proportion of possessed, naturally, who trained alongside the World Eaters Legion. One of Tal's close friends outside his own legion was the World Eaters captain Khan, yes, that Khan, and the two fought together often during the Shadow Crusade. Unfortunately, according to Erebus, Khan had a destiny to fulfill, and Argel Tal may have prevented that destiny from coming to pass. And so, on Euceria, Erebus murdered the last of the Gal Vorbak, thus allowing Khan to fully embrace Chaos / Khorne. It is worth noting that Khan battered Erebus when he found out, forcing the first chaplain to teleport away from the World Eater's flagship, the Conqueror. What of Ingathel's prophecy, you may ask? Well, he died under the shadow of an Imperator Titan's giant Aquila. Cop-out. The final Word-Bearer we shall look at today is Sor Talgron. There were many more, but I doubt I can hang this craft world in orbit for much longer without suddenly demons. Talgron was the captain of the 34th Company of the Wordbearers, trained by Volkhar Reth, who served in the Crusader host, a group of seemingly unknown purpose with representatives from every legion. He was present at Monarchia, and at a world titled 4716, the name has long since been forgotten, also the world in which Lorgar came out of his seclusion. The population were faithful to the Emperor, but Corphaeron ordered them exterminated, reporting that they were in fact heathens. Talgron disagreed, though he hadn't met the people, arguing for re-education instead, but he went along with it because you're not going to argue with your first captain, are you? The 34th captain was the first to reach their main temple and realise their emperor-worshipping ways, so was aghast when the re-emerged Lorgar and co. ordered the entire world bombed and massacred. Talgron was not the most pious when it came to believing in the god Emperor, and his faith in Lorgar was enough to let him accept it and fall to chaos. He then popped up a couple of times during the heresy. He travelled to Terra at the onset of the heresy to assure the Emperor of Lorgar's loyalty, and was able to secure custody of his old mentor, who had been detained by Rogel Dawn along with the entire Crusader host when word got back of Horus's fall. Reth refused to turn, but rather than kill him, Talgron transformed him into a conduit for demons for when the time came to invade the cradle of humanity. He locked him away somewhere on Terra in a place called the Vault, just to make sure. Saw Talgron was then quote-unquote killed during the Percepton campaign in the Shadow Crusade in an ultramarine Phosphex bomb attack, but he survived through embracing chaos, again aka by cheating, becoming a Dark Apostle once they had put him back together. He had kind of fused with his armour, so tech, sorcery and nonsense was needed. He then died again on Terra, and was entombed in a dreadnought that became known as the Warmonger. He then died again for the final time. 3 strikes you're out? When a Necron Lord called the Undying One exploded during the battle for Boros Prime. So ends the Heresy-era tale of the Wordbearers. The first legion to fall to chaos. They are a tad one-dimensional if you ask me. I couldn't find a single loyalist other than Reth, so I assume they got purged totally on Istvan 3, or at some other point. Actually, no, it wouldn't be Istvan 3, would it? But that doesn't make them less noteworthy or impressive. Their use of cultists and demons is perhaps second to none, and they will never retreat. This is the first part of our look at the Legiones Astartes, and with 17 more to go, we have a lot to cover. But for now, I need to take this craft world and translate the hell away from Sicaris. Okay, just code that in and go. Okay, real space. Hi again. We have a trip ahead of us before our next Legion destination, so on the way we'll cover the last demonic thingamabobs that I want to talk about. A few legendary demon princes. Join me for that next time. Thank you for watching. My name is Michael for Tactica Imperialis, and this has been the first part of Legions, a 40k Stories mini-series. I'll see you all again. Goodbye.